before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and leave a comment if you think you can handle the truth, because this story isn't for the faint of heart. Buckle up. What you're about to witness is a descent into human darkness, and once you start, there's no turning back. The rain fell in sheets that night, slick and relentless, as Officer Daniel Pierce navigated the deserted backroads of Charleston County. The neon lights of his patrol car sliced through the darkness, reflecting off puddles like fractured mirrors. Every shadow seemed to move, every rustle of leaves potential threat. And then the call came. A body discovered at the edge of an abandoned textile mill. Pierce arrived to find the scene more disturbing than he expected. A woman mid-30s lay sprawled across the cracked concrete, eyes wide open as if in the midst of a silent scream. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her like a second skin, and bruises traced her arms and neck in a pattern that spoke of prolonged struggle. Beside her, a single piece of evidence gleamed in the rain, a silver locket engraved with name, Carter Bell. The air smelled of wet asphalt and something darker, something metallic. Pierce knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene. "Who found her?" he asked a uniformed officer standing nearby. "Jogger," the officer said, voice tight. Said he saw her through the fog, lying there like she'd been left to rot. Pierce frowned. Something about the body's position felt staged, almost deliberate. He scanned the surrounding area, abandoned machinery, graffiti-stained walls, a rusted chain-link fence that had long given way to weeds. This wasn't a random crime of opportunity. This was personal. At the same time, across town, a small, dimly lit apartment on Maple Street was shaking. Leonora Leo Hart, the district attorney's youngest investigator, was on the phone, her voice trembling but determined. "Yes, I've seen it. And yes, there's more to this than just another murder. You don't understand. The locket. It links her to death row. To him." She ended the call and stared out the window at the rain-soaked street below. Carter Bell had been executed 3 months ago. Officially, his last moments had been witnessed, cataloged, and recorded. But here was the first evidence that someone close to him, someone who knew too much, might have paid the ultimate price. Leo had followed Bell's case from the beginning. A man convicted of the brutal murder of his wife and daughter. Bell had maintained his innocence until the very end. But in the shadows of his trial, rumors had swirled a web of betrayal. Prison guards complicit in secret deals, lovers hiding secrets, and lawyers who would do anything to win a verdict. Leo's gut told her that Bell's story wasn't finished. Meanwhile, Pierce began canvassing the area, moving from shadow to shadow, his flashlight cutting through the mist. Something on the ground caught his eye, small, almost invisible scratches on the concrete, leading to a side entrance of the mill. The door was rusted, chained, and padlocked. Whoever had done this didn't want anyone finding what was inside. But Pierce had a feeling they were wrong. The chain creaked under his gloved hands as he forced the padlock open, heart pounding. Inside, the smell hit him first. Stale blood, decay, and something chemical, like industrial cleaners masking what had truly happened. And then he saw it. A series of photographs scattered across the floor. Family portraits, snapshots of Bell in prison, letters with fragments of confession scribbled in a neat, tight hand. Pierce's eyes widened as he noticed one photo, slightly crumpled at the edges. It showed Carter Bell, not in the prison uniform of the executed man, but free, smiling, standing next to the same woman now lying dead outside. And in her hand, barely visible, was the very locket that had identified her. Leo arrived shortly after, her trench coat dripping with rain. She knelt beside Pierce, examining the scattered evidence. This changes everything," she whispered, voice tight with disbelief. "If Carter Bell is dead, then who took her?" Their attention shifted to a wall. Spray painted in black, jagged letters, "The truth never dies." Pierce's hand hovered over the photos. Someone sending a message. Leo's eyes narrowed. And it's personal. The investigation escalated quickly. Interviews revealed that the woman, Marcy Vance, had been working for a nonprofit focused on death row inmates. She specialized in emotional support and legal advocacy. People adored her, trusted her, but there were whispers, hushed conversations about affairs with guards, clandestine meetings with ex-prisoners, and arguments that ended in tears. Marcy's life had intersected with the darkest corners of human nature, and now it had cost her everything. Detectives traced Marcy's last movements. Surveillance footage showed her leaving a downtown cafe, smiling nervously at her phone, as if anticipating a message. Then she entered a black sedan, windows tinted, license plate partially obscured. Witnesses claimed a man had been driving, but no one could provide a clear image. Pierce and Leo combed through her digital footprint. Emails, messages, social media. One email stood out, a cryptic note sent to Marcy just days before her death. "He's not finished, and neither are we. Meet me where it all began." It was unsigned, but Leo knew exactly what it meant. Carter Bell's last night, the trial, the execution. Somewhere in a haze of injustice, someone had decided that Marcy had to pay the price for secrets better left buried. Hours turned into days. Every lead seemed to twist back on itself. A suspect would vanish, only for a clue to reappear in an impossible location. Marcy's locket had been found at the scene, but no fingerprints matched the victim or any known associate. Every interview added more suspicion. Prison guards pointing fingers at lawyers hinting at corruption within law enforcement, and friends suggesting that Marcy had been seen meeting someone in the middle of the night, someone whose very identity seemed untraceable. Then came the breakthrough, or the moment that changed everything. Leo received an anonymous package at the DA's office. Inside was a tape recorder and a single reel of audio. Her hands shook as she pressed play. The voice on the tape was chilling, calm, unnervingly deliberate. "Did you think it was over? Did you think you could bury the sins of the past? He's gone, yes, but the ball hasn't ended. And the next dance is yours to tend." The tape ended. Silence filled the room, suffocating and complete. Pierce stared at Leo, incredulous. What is this? Some sick joke?" Leo shook her head slowly. "No joke. This is a warning." As the rain continued to fall outside, the two investigators realized that they were no longer merely solving a murder. They were being drawn into a web of vengeance, obsession, and secrets tied to the man who had already faced death. And at the heart of it all was someone with the power to manipulate, to deceive, and to strike again without leaving a trace. That night, as the city slept under a veil of storm clouds, Pierce checked the perimeter of the mill one last time. The fog had thickened, and the wind carried whispers that sounded eerily like a voice calling his name. He moved toward the edge of the property and froze. A fresh set of footprints led directly to the basement door, wet, heavy, deliberate. And then, as he reached for the handle, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The padlock that had been cut open earlier had been replaced, and carved into the door, in letters deep enough to catch the shadows of his flashlight, was a single word: "Welcome." Pierce and Leo exchanged a glance, understanding instantly that the real nightmare was just beginning. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one, hit subscribe so you don't miss it. The storm had not relented. Rain lashed against the city's streets like cold knives, pooling in gutters, turning sidewalks into mirrors of the dark sky above. Pierce and Leo had barely escaped the mill when the door slammed behind them, leaving them in near total darkness, with only their flashlights to cut through the mist. That padlock, replaced pristine, almost mocking, was a signal. Someone had been waiting. Back at the precinct, the tension was palpable. Detectives muttered about the case being too weird even for Charleston. But Leo and Pierce knew better. This wasn't random. This was carefully orchestrated. Every clue was a breadcrumb leading deeper into a trap. Leo sat in her office, combing through Marcy's contacts again. She was meticulous, obsessed, scanning emails and messages for any connection to Bell's past, his execution, or the shadowy figures rumored to have pulled strings behind the scenes. And then she found it. A pattern, a series of money transfers, small but regular, from prison guards to an untraceable offshore account. "These aren't just bribes," Leo said quietly to Pierce, pointing to the screen. "Someone's funding a network, and it's been going on for years. Bell's case, it's not an anomaly, it's part of something bigger." Pierce leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "So you're telling me this isn't about Marcy. It's about Bell. And the people who wanted him dead are still at it." Leo nodded, her eyes hard. And now they're targeting anyone who knows too much. The next morning, the first sign of escalation came fast. A local journalist who had covered Bell's trial was found in her apartment. Her body slumped over her desk, a typewriter key clenched in her fist like a grotesque punctuation mark. The scene suggested someone wanted it to look like suicide, but forensic analysis revealed blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Someone had staged it carefully, but not carefully enough. Pierce and Leo arrived at the apartment, the crime scene tape flapping violently in the wind. Pierce knelt by the body, examining the notes scattered across the desk. They were draft articles, all focused on Bell, on the prison system, on corruption tied to executions. Someone was sending a clear message: dig too deep and you die. Leo picked up one paper, the ink smeared with rainwater, or maybe something else. She squinted, recognizing fragment of handwriting she'd seen before. The same precise, tight letters found in the notes at the mill. Someone was orchestrating a chain of terror, and the signature was consistent. "Pierce," she said softly, voice trembling, "they're watching us. Everything we touch, every move we make, they know about it, and they're going to escalate." Escalation came sooner than they expected. That evening, a frantic call from an anonymous source led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The tip was vague. "She's alive. If you want to see her, come now." Pierce and Leo approached cautiously, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through shadows that seemed alive. The warehouse smelled of dust, rust, and something fouler, like rot hidden beneath the floorboards. As they moved through the main room, Leo noticed a series of photographs pinned to the wall. Each one depicted moments from Marcy's life, at the nonprofit, smiling with clients, signing documents, laughing. And beneath each photo, a small symbol was etched, a tiny circle with a slash through it. "It's a countdown," Leo whispered, "or a trail, or a warning." Pierce's gaze flicked to the shadows, and then he froze. Movement, subtle, almost imperceptible, at the far corner of the warehouse. A figure emerged, tall, thin, wearing a mask that obscured the face. The sound of footsteps echoed like gunshots in the empty building. "Drop it," Pierce shouted, his voice bouncing off the walls. The figure didn't stop, and then, with inhuman speed, it vanished through a hidden doorway, leaving behind only a single, chilling clue, a folded piece of paper with a single line scrawled in the same handwriting Leo had seen before. "The executioner never sleeps." It was a phrase Carter Bell had once used in prison letters to Marcy, describing the slow death of injustice he believed had been forced upon him. Now, it had become a warning, directed at anyone who dared investigate his world. The following days descended into chaos. Witnesses disappeared, alibis crumbled, and the network of corruption Leo had discovered seemed to extend into the highest echelons of law enforcement. A detective on the force, quietly questioning irregularities in the execution procedures, vanished without a trace. Another journalist's car exploded in her driveway. Every clue they pursued led to another dead end, or worse, another body. Pierce and Leo realized the pattern wasn't just random. The killer or killers were tracing their movements, learning their habits, exploiting weaknesses. It was no longer a murder investigation. It was a game of cat and mouse, and the stakes were deadly. Then came the breakthrough. Leo discovered a series of encrypted files hidden in Marcy's email archives. One folder, labeled simply Bell's Legacy, contained detailed dossiers on key figures tied to Bell's trial, including prison guards, lawyers, and even the judge who had presided over his case. Each profile contained sensitive information, death secrets, past crimes, evidence that could ruin lives. Pierce stared at the screen, horror dawning. This isn't just about revenge. Someone's building leverage, collecting sins like trophies. They planned this for years. Leo nodded grimly. And Marcy, she got too close. She wasn't just helping inmates. She was documenting the truth. And now, the truth is coming for everyone who touched it. Their investigation led them to a small, decrepit cabin deep in the woods, a place previously overlooked. The interior was meticulously clean, almost clinical, and the walls were lined with shelves of photographs, letters, and detailed timelines. It was a shrine to Carter Bell, yes, but also to the people who had been connected to him. Each person was cataloged, monitored, and rated according to threat level. Pierce felt bile rise in his throat. This is obsession. This is injustice. It's madness. Leo's voice was tight. And someone is still alive in here. Someone we haven't found yet. As they moved further into the cabin, the sound of a faint hum caught their attention. Pierce followed it to a small, locked room at the back. Using the same tactical skills that had gotten them this far, he forced the door open. Inside, chained to a chair, was Marcy. She was pale, bruised, but alive. Her eyes widened at the sight of Leo and Pierce, relief flooding her face. But their victory was short-lived. A click echoed behind them. They turned slowly, weapons raised, and froze. A figure stood in the doorway, hand resting on a pistol, mask silent, unyielding. And in one swift motion, the figure fired, not at them but at the wall. The bullet hit a steel safe embedded into the wall, shattering the lock. The figure reached inside and pulled out a thick manila envelope, tossing it onto the floor before disappearing into the night. Pierce lunged for the envelope. Inside were documents, photographs, and, most chillingly, a death roster. Names lined the page, friends, allies, witnesses, people connected to Belle and Marcy. And at the bottom, written in blood-red ink, "Next, you?" Leo swallowed hard. They know we're here. They know we're next. The storm outside intensified, as if echoing the chaos inside the cabin. Pierce secured Marcy, while Leo rifled through the envelope, realizing with a sinking heart that this was only the beginning. Someone, somewhere, had orchestrated a campaign of terror that would continue until every secret, every betrayal, every hidden sin was exposed or destroyed. And as they prepared to leave the cabin, Leo noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small photograph pinned to the wall in the corner, half hidden. It was Carter Bell, but not as she remembered. He was smiling, alive, standing behind the masked figure they had just seen. Her hand froze on the photograph. "Pierce, he's not dead." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Then everything we know is a lie. And that means we're dealing with someone who's been playing us from the very beginning." Outside, the rain poured harder, drumming against the roof like a warning. And deep in the shadows, a figure watched them leave the cabin, silent, patient, waiting for the next move in a game that had no rules and no mercy. The night swallowed them whole, leaving only one undeniable truth. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. The rain had finally stopped, but the city remained cloaked in fog. Street lights flickered against the wet pavement, casting long, distorted shadows that made every alleyway look like a trap. Pierce, Leo, and Marcy drove in tense silence, the envelope from the cabin sitting heavily on the dashboard. Every instinct told them they were being watched. Marcy, weak but determined, kept her eyes on the road ahead. "They're cleaning up," she said quietly. "Every lead we touch, every friend we have, they're disappearing. They want us isolated. And the worst part," she hesitated, "the worst part is, Bell's still alive. And if he is, everything we thought we knew about him is a lie." Pierce glanced at her, frowning. "Alive? After the execution?" Marcy's nod was grim. "The execution was staged. I never found out how, but someone on the inside helped him. And now, he's playing us, using the fear, the bodies, the threats. This isn't about justice. It's about power." Leo, staring at the envelope, realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. Names, connections, secrets. Every piece of the Bell case had been meticulously documented, cataloged, and weaponized. Whoever had orchestrated this wasn't just a killer. They were a strategist, a predator who understood human psychology down to its most fragile nerves. The trio followed the trail of the last known sightings of the masked figure. It led them to an abandoned estate on the outskirts of Charleston, a mansion half swallowed by overgrown vines and neglect. The air smelled of mildew, rust, and decay. They entered cautiously, flashlights cutting through the dust-filled halls. Every room told a story. Walls covered with photographs of Carter Bell, Marcy, and anyone who had been involved in the trial. Newspaper clippings pinned next to letters in meticulous handwriting. Each room was a shrine to obsession and revenge. And then they found it. A hidden staircase descending into the cellar. The faint sound of dripping water echoed from below. Pierce led the way, gun drawn, senses on high alert. The stairs creaked under their weight, each step threatening to give them away. At the bottom, they found a single, dimly lit room. Chains hung from the ceiling, maps of the city spread across a table, and in the corner, the masked figure waited, calm, collected, almost expectant. And standing behind him, Carter Bell, alive, thin but wiry, eyes glinting with a cold intelligence that made Marcy's stomach turn. "You," Pierce said, voice shaking with disbelief. "You're alive. After everything, why?" Bell's smile was slow, deliberate, terrifying in its serenity. "Why? Because they made me a monster. They executed the man who was innocent. And now, I make the world pay." Leo stepped forward. "The murders, the threats, the bodies, this was all you?" Bell shook his head slightly. "No, not me. Him." He gestured to a masked figure, who removed a mask, revealing someone no one expected. A former prison guard, one of Bell's supposed allies during incarceration. He's the instrument. I pull the strings. He executes. Everyone else? Collateral. Pierce tightened his grip on his gun. "Enough games. You're going back to prison." Bell laughed, a sound devoid of humor, filled only with malice. "Prison? That's what they wanted. That's the cage they made for me. But I don't live in cages anymore. I live in shadows. And shadows, they see everything." The masked figure stepped forward, weapon raised. The tension was suffocating. Leo's mind raced. "Pierce, the envelope, the roster, it's a trap. They're trying to isolate us. We can't confront them here." Marcy's voice trembled. "There's another way. He's predictable, obsessive. Look at all this, his patterns, his symbols. He leaves breadcrumbs because he wants us to follow them. That's how he thinks. That's how he can be caught." Pierce nodded slowly, realizing the truth. We have to outsmart him, not just chase him. As if on cue, Bell's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, momentarily distracted. In that brief lapse, Leo acted. She lunged to the phone, smashing it to the floor. The masked figure froze, confused. Pierce and Marcy used a moment to advance. Guns drawn. A tense standoff ensued. Words were exchanged, threats, taunts, confessions, all escalating the tension. Bell's obsession with the execution, his hatred for the justice system, his desire to manipulate those around him, became horrifyingly clear. He wasn't just a killer, he was a puppet master, playing fear like a symphony. But then came the twist no one saw coming. Marcy, still weak but resolute, revealed a hidden recording she had kept from her interactions with Bell before his supposed execution. It wasn't just evidence. It was proof of his true confession. Bell had orchestrated every aspect of his trial, execution, and the aftermath. He had manipulated the system, orchestrated bribes, and had planted clues to make it appear he was a victim when in truth, he had been planning revenge all along. Bell's eyes widened as he realized the trap he had walked into. "You," he whispered, voice low, deadly. "You know everything." "Yes," Marcy said, her voice steady despite the bruises and exhaustion. "And now it's over." Before Bell could react, Pierce moved with precision, disarming him. The masked figure hesitated, then bolted, disappearing into the labyrinth of the mansion. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the clouds, illuminating the chaos left behind. Bell was taken into custody, silent but smoldering with rage. The extent of his machinations would shock the nation once revealed. Every murder, every threat, every act of terror had been part of a carefully constructed web, designed to make the world believe he was dead, while exacting vengeance on those connected to him. Weeks later, as the investigation concluded, the bodies were counted, the threats traced, and the secrets exposed, Leo and Pierce reflected on the nightmare they had endured. But even as the city returned to a semblance of normalcy, one truth lingered. The darkness Bell had unleashed couldn't be fully erased. It had left scars on those who survived, and shadows in corners that would never be light again. Marcy returned to her work with a renewed sense of purpose, but the memory of the terror she had faced haunted her. Pierce and Leo remained vigilant, knowing that evil like Bell's didn't always end behind bars. It adapted, it lingered, it waited, and somewhere, In the quiet corners of Charleston, a new figure watched, studying patterns, tracing histories, waiting. The game was over for Bell, but the echoes of his monster's ball would continue to dance in the minds of those who survived, a chilling reminder that some shadows never fade. The nightmare had ended, but only for now.